The title of what I want to share with you about today is, "And the student asked humbly, how can I remove my shortcomings?" So I want you to look at what step 7 looks like, as well as the promise, the spiritual principle, and the action step. And so there's what step 7 is humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. And our spiritual principle that we'll focus on next week is humility. And our promise, the AA promise, is we will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. And finally, our spiritual action step at the end of the month will be we will grow in selfless service and we'll heal our selfish, narcissistic, and self-centered behaviors and thoughts. Now, I know most of those don't apply to any of us in this room. But to all those that it may, I thought I'd start off with a quote from a French author that lived in the mid-1800s, I want you to get. So this is a while back. His name is Gustave Flaubert. And the quote is, "Nothing is more humiliating than to see idiots succeed in enterprises we have failed in." Isn't that good? That's like a 150-year-old quote. But boy, it felt relevant. So as we start looking at this thing called shortcomings, and I know that when we get in New Thought and we get in self-help and all that, we get told that we shouldn't ever focus on anything negative. We should only bring energy to the positive, and we shouldn't examine anything that has anything to do with us being less than all that we are. But you see, by looking and examining our shortcomings and turning those into strength, it's then that makes it easier for us to become all that we are. So there is nothing wrong with it. I want you to understand. I've been looking at it for a majority of my life, and I've never once been hesitant to look at my shortcomings. And if you wonder if you have any shortcomings, just get into a relationship. They'll be happy to point out all your shortcomings. True? So I thought I really kind of giggled to myself when I wrote this morning, is this little line that said, wouldn't it be great that instead of making a list of all of our shortcomings that we need removed, that for a moment we could make a list of the shortcomings of those around us that we feel they need to remove. Because wouldn't it be great if we could just make up a list of all the shortcomings that we see in each other and say, here, go fix them, and when you fix them, then come back and I'll be loving to you. Isn't that what we really do? I mean, how much time do we spend analyzing, breaking down other people's behaviors, action statements, and trying to figure them out and what drives them and what causes them to be that way and all that? And man, if they will just get it right, then I'll be okay to be with them. Those are those shortcomings. But you see, when we're seeing oftentimes, and it's important, and if we had about 3 hours, I'd be able to be really clear on this, to be able to discern between when another person has a shortcoming and when we are seeing that shortcoming in another person. Are you clear on that one? Because it's real important, is people do have shortcomings, and sometimes those shortcomings impact us. And there are times when we project our own shortcomings into another, and spiritual awareness and enlightenment and consciousness allows us the ability to discern between the two. Those are important, because otherwise we're never aware when a person is being dysfunctional or when they're not. And then what happens is we try to, in a sense, shift or change our behavior to operate within a person's dysfunction or shortcomings. Have anyone ever tried to maneuver yourself so that you could fit into another person, and pretty soon you're like this for hours, and a person comes up and says, how you doing? Fine. How long you been like that? Well, look at my basket in front of me. I've gotten $8 in tips. I've been here quite a while. I'm the statue of dysfunction. If you guys don't help grow the church, I'm going to get a new job busking. I'm going to turn into the statue of dysfunction. So anyway, to set us off onto really the month of humility, I found this incredible quote. I didn't bother to look up who she is, Monica Baldwin. I'll figure that she's an author or speaker, teacher, lecturer somewhere. If somebody knows who you are, who she is, great. Here's the statement that Monica Baldwin says that really sets us up for this month. What makes humility so desirable is the marvelous thing it does to us. It creates in us a capacity for the closest possible intimacy with God. That's huge. Those three words, closest possible intimacy, and we'll add those last two, with God. So, in a sense, if we've been hesitant to ever be humble, to practice humility, maybe we haven't ever had the deepest relationship we could with God. And the thing that stops us from being humble, from practicing humility, is that little thing called pride. Pride is the number one thing that stops us from healing. Pride is the number one thing that stops a father from ever saying he's sorry to his child. Pride is what stops us from asking for help. Pride is what's saying, I don't know what to do next. Can you help me? God. That's what stops us. So we want to look at and understand the importance of exactly what does humility mean. It means to be modest, self-effacing, unassuming, down to earth, and respectful. That's a small aspect of what humility means. So as we embrace the power of humility into step 7, what we learn is that step 7 is in many ways similar to step 3, which was made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood God to be. But step 7 is more specific, however, because now we have completed our personal inventories and we now have a better idea of the roots of our non-supportive behaviors. If each of you had to write a list real quick, what's your 5 top biggest non-supportive behaviors? Would you be clear on it, or would you go, well, I don't know. If you're not sure, ask your partner. Ask your family member, ask your coworkers. Go around and ask, hey, have you ever tried this, or is your pride too big? What do you see as my 5 biggest shortcomings? I challenge you that for this next week. Go up to those that you trust and say, in all honesty, and I won't hold it back. I won't hold it against you, because that's what stops us from giving a person an honest answer. Because then they get mad at us 3 weeks later and say, well, you said that, but you said you wanted to know. That's why I'm going to go to the statue job. People come out and say, well, what's my shortcomings? And then I'm arrogant because I point them out to them. That's always funny. So have you ever tried that? I've done it. I can't tell you. I've done it at least 5 times in my life. What do you see as my 5 biggest shortcomings? I don't like it because my pride says, well, I'm not those things. I'm not that. I'm not that. Well, then how are they seeing it? Because you're not that. Are we willing to hear what other people are seeing? Or is that our shortcoming? So we want to examine then exactly what are our shortcomings that prevent us from being all that we can be. So does anybody think at this moment there could be one? From attaining that consciousness of enlightenment. Because what happens through this 7th step that we are embarking upon, and what scares me continuously, this is what worries me about what we've been doing this whole theme for this year, and I'm devoting so much energy, so much time, that it's going to be an incredible program when it's all put together at the end of 12 months of these lectures, these talks, the program. Do you read the message in the program every Sunday, for each month? And everything is being put together, and the videos on the service, and that is that our pride is going to say, I don't need that. That's not for me. That's for somebody else. So I'm looking at us, can we be humble enough to examine our own shortcomings? Because that's what step 7 is about. That's what step 7 is. It says, we do our best to not play games about these defects of character. In this step, we surrender to the surgery of God. I love that little quote. The surgery of God. And ask God to remove these defects of character. We do this with a sincere and humble heart, knowing that only in such a way can we find our path to true sanity and peace. This may also mean action on our part in getting rid of some of the sources that lead to our addictive or unhealthy behavior. So you see, if we're trying to heal, we can't have what is causing us or what we need to heal from in our immediate surroundings. Do you understand that? So it means, let's say an easy one that we can all relate to is if we're trying to heal right now from drinking, then you can't have alcohol in your house. And you can't have somebody else drinking alcohol in the house if that's what you're trying to do. If you're trying to heal from any other behavior, you can't have it inside with you or around you. So that's what it's saying. But it says, if it is my pride that makes us believe that we can still live with these sources of temptation, then the sources need to go along with our pride. We often need to rid our life of those things, people, or situations that are causing us to fall or stumble, as long as we do so in a responsible manner. The seventh step is where we make the change in our attitude, which permits us, with humility as our guide, to move out from ourselves and towards others and towards God. This whole emphasis of step 7 is on humility. It is really saying to us that we ought to be willing to try humility in seeking the removal of our shortcomings, and came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. If that degree of humility can enable us to find the grace through which our unhealthy behaviors and obsessions can be banished, then there must be hope that the same result, respecting and other problems, can also be possibly resolved. From the book of 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, it says, taking step 7 was for many of us the greatest act of authentic humility we have ever been asked to commit, to transfer control of our recovery over to God. See, oftentimes when a person is in a partnership, a marriage, a family, who becomes in charge of that person's recovery, or thinks they are, is that other person that's not battling the addiction. They want to take charge of the other person's recovery plan. And that doesn't work. It's not up to another person to dictate, here's what you need to do to get better. And now you do it this way, and you'll be all better. Here's what you need to do, and here's... Well, it may or may not be right. So who do we want in charge of our recovering plan? I don't know. The thing that's created 200 billion galaxies? Or your partner? I don't know. Really? God. What do we want? We want God in charge of our lives, because I see what I do when I'm in charge of my own. Not always so good. Anybody found that when you're in charge of your life, running your own life, sometimes the results aren't always so good? When we think it's up to us to make it happen. I have no idea why I feel like this. I didn't have coffee or nothing. I think it's this Canada Day weekend. According to the 12 promises and 12 traditions, humility is a clear recognition of who we are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. That is, humility is seeing ourselves as we actually are at the moment, good and bad, strong and weak, and acting authentically on those truths. This is not a naive attitude suggestion we have in some way already arrived. It is a sincere attempt to state the positive truth that we can face the truth of our shortcomings and the fact that we are powerless to change and to begin to let God take our defects away. We have entered into the pathway of humility. It is on the pathway where we humbly ask God to remove all these defects of character. The tools of recovery bring the healing, happiness, and security we have dreamed of. But once more, it is only powerlessness and pain that can force us to take the 7th step into humility. See, a lot of times when we really reach out for help, is what I've said many times in here and what's taught all through spiritual centers and self-help, is that usually when we get really humble and we really need help, or we ask for prayer, or we reach out and we go, wow, we got to work on ourselves, is when the big 3 break down, which is finances, health, or relationship, or as I like to say, D, all the above. Then oftentimes we really get humble. We get humbled. But here I found this great quote by St. Bernard, not the dog. Great statement. And this is what should be impregnated into every person that is on the climb to any kind of fame or notoriety or success out in the culture, out in society, meaning any athlete, politician, actor, singer, etc. This is what the statement says. It says, "It is no great thing to be humble when you are brought low by those breakdowns. But to be humble when you are praised is a great and rare attainment." Can you imagine if our politicians, if our athletes, if our movie actors, and all those others that are like them that are out there, is that what they did is they became more humble based on their success instead of all of themselves, full of themselves? Because it's that full of themselves that gets them in trouble. Ask Tiger Woods. And ask the countless others that we see in the news on a regular basis. When we become so full of ourselves, it's then that we get in trouble, because we forget to remain humble. The more successful we become in life, the more humble we should be. They should equate with each other. And truly, the great ones that really grow in consciousness and demonstrate it out on a large level, is huge. And I think of Warren Buffett often. Top 2, 3 most successful men in the world based on finances. One of the most humble men, lived in the same house for 35 years, drives an old Lincoln, does not exert his financial influence on others. People want to listen. I don't know, somebody knows how to make $50 billion. I kind of want to pay attention to their financial tips. But is he full of himself? Not if you've ever watched him. Not that I can tell from afar. I don't know him personally. I haven't lived with him. I haven't gone to Dairy Queen, and he likes to and owns most of them. Simple investment philosophy he has, if you've never heard it. If you like it, buy it. If you use it, buy it, because other people are probably using it too. That's how he got rich. Not hard. Humility is as much a part of recovering and healing as food and water is to keeping us alive. As our addictions and behaviors progress, we devoted our energy towards satisfying our material desires. All of the needs were beyond our reach. We always wanted gratification for our basic desires. For our basic desires. The word humble applies because we approach this power greater than ourselves to pray for the freedom to live without the limitations of our past ways. It's such a great line, limitations of our past ways. If you look back on your past life, what has been limiting thoughts that have kept you back from your full potential? Limiting thoughts that you don't deserve. Limiting thoughts that you're not good enough, educated enough, smart enough. What are those limitations that have held you back in your life? Those are our shortcomings that we want to heal. By not acknowledging them but continuing to act upon them, we're not going to expand our awareness, our ability to succeed, grow, prosper, become more of who we are intended to be. Many of us are willing to do it without reservations on pure blind faith, because we are sick of what we have been doing, and we are feeling whatever it is that works. Whatever works, we go all the way. And so maybe what we should try often that would help us with our shortcomings is this fabled story called the Trouble Tree. And this is how the story has been told for a long time, and I tell it in a first-person sense, from the first person. The carpenter I hired to help me restore an old farmhouse had just finished a rough first day on the job. A flat tire made him lose an hour of work. His electric saw quit, and now his ancient pickup truck refused to start. Anybody had a day like that? While I drove him home, he sat in stony silence. On arriving, he invited me in to meet his family. As we walked to the front door, he paused briefly at a small tree, touching tips of the branches with both of his hands. When opening the door, he underwent an amazing transformation. His tan face was wreathed in smiles, and he hugged his 2 small children and gave his wife a kiss. Afterward, he walked me to the car. We passed the tree, and my curiosity got the better of me, and I asked him about it, what I had seen him do earlier. "Oh, that's my trouble tree," he replied. "I know I can't help having troubles on the job, but one thing's for sure, those troubles don't belong in the house with my wife and the children. So I just hang them up on the tree every night, and when I come home, then in the morning, I can pick them up again." And I'm going to pause the story there for a moment and ask each of us to be honest enough with ourselves to ask how many of us have brought our personal troubles into our home and made those personal troubles our family troubles? Have we ever practiced that shortcoming in our life? Do we need help in healing those shortcomings? Back to the story. Funny thing is, he smiled, when I come out in the morning to pick them up, there ain't nearly as many as I remember hanging up the night before. Can you imagine? Before we walk in the door, that we leave our troubles of the day outside and not carry them into our family. Imagine if we could be that disciplined, become that conscious and aware. How humble could we be as we approach our family? Story continues. I don't know who first told the story. No one seems to know. But he or she must have been a very wise person. Putting boundaries around our problems is a really good idea. It prevents our difficulties from spilling over onto other people, especially loved ones, who can't do anything about our problems anyway. Why burden them if they can't help us in the first place? So find yourself, if you don't already have a tree or plant out front, or plant one. A trouble tree outside your front door, or a potted trouble plant. If you live in an apartment and use it whenever you come home. Be grateful that you have loved ones to go home to, even if your loved one is your beloved dog or cherished cat or prized goldfish. And when you pick up your troubles on the way out each morning, be grateful that they're not as heavy as they were the night before. Because oftentimes what I found for many of us is that, including myself, is that one of our shortcomings that we often need to be removed is our idea or our consciousness around being ungrateful for what we do have. And so I wanted to remind us oftentimes what we look as complaints, really they should be things that we're thankful for, such as, I am thankful for the mess to clean after a party because it means I have been surrounded by friends. I am thankful for the taxes I pay because it means that I am employed. I am thankful for a lawn that needs mowing, windows that need cleaning, and gutters that need fixing because it means I have a home. I am thankful for my shadow that watches me work because it means I am out in the sunshine. I am thankful for the spot I find at the far end of the parking lot because it means I am capable of walking. I am thankful for all the complaining I hear about our government because it means we have freedom of speech. I am thankful for my huge heating bill because it means I am warm. I am thankful for the lady behind me in church who sings off key because it means that I can hear. I am thankful for the alarm that goes off early in the morning hours because it means that I am alive. I am thankful for the piles of laundry and ironing because it means my loved ones are nearby. I am thankful for the weariness and aching muscles at the end of the day because it means I have been productive. So has one of our shortcomings been in life around being ungrateful? Is there any room for improvement there? Are we done? We're good. I'm going to stay where I am and around that whole state of thankfulness for the rest of my life. There's no room for improvement. I'm good. No shortcoming there. So I always got to bring a little humor, and I'm doing my best to adjust all this Canadian stuff. So I found a little joke. I understand the Newfie thing. So I want to share with you a Newfie password. It says the Bank of Montreal was running a recent password audit and found Stevie O'Toole from Conception Bay, Newfoundland, right? Is that how we say it? Even though it's, however, I don't know. Using the following password. Here's what it looked like. Mickey, Donald, Minnie, Goofy, Daffy, Bugs, Elmer, Pluto, and Ottawa. When Stevie was asked why he had such a long password, he replied, Lord, none, Jesus. Are ye blind? You're stupid. I was told my password had to be at least 8 characters long with 1 capital. So I want you to open your mind for this last part that I want to share, your heart. I would hope that you will. Listen to what I want to share and conclude here today with. Is maybe humanity's ignorance is a shortcoming. Since the beginning of time, the ignorant have always screamed the loudest, hurting the unsuspecting masses and forcing them to do their bidding, to follow their lead, their commands. They defended their worldly desires by citing scripture they did not fully understand. They celebrated their intolerance as proof of their conviction of others. There was once a time when the brightest minds perceived the earth as flat. For if the earth were round, then surely the oceans would spill off. Imagine how you would have been mocked had you have proclaimed some 700 years ago, not only is the world a sphere, but there is an invisible force that holds everything to its surface. If we compare New Thought spirituality to the early explorers who were mocked for embracing the sacrilegious notion of a spherical earth, almost overnight these explorers went from fools to heroes, discovering uncharted worlds and expanding the horizons of everyone on earth. Every great philosophical shift in history began with a single bold idea. The question is not whether God has imbued humanity with great powers, but rather how we liberate those powers. There is a great spiritual treasure buried out there somewhere, a treasure that has waited patiently in darkness for generations, if not millenniums. The promise of great transformational enlightenment has been promised forever by the clearest of minds, St. Augustine, Sir Francis Bacon, Sir Isaac Newton, Einstein, and on, have written and spoken of a transformative moment of enlightenment. Even Jesus himself said, "Nothing is hidden that will not be known, nor secret that will not come to light." If history has taught us anything at all, it has taught us that the strange ideas we mock today will one day be our celebrated truths. History is replete with great minds who have all proclaimed the same thing. Great minds who have all insisted that humanity possesses mystical abilities of which we are unaware. Knowledge grows exponentially. The more we know, the greater our ability to learn, and the faster we expand our knowledge base. In science, each new technology that is invented becomes a tool to invent new technologies, and it snowballs from there. That is why science has advanced more in the last 5 years than it has in the previous 5,000. Mathematically, as time passes, the exponential curve of progress becomes almost vertical, and new development occurs incredibly fast within the acceleration of the human spiritual mind. Within each of us, within each one of us, is a portal through which the energy of our Creator passes. This energy brings form to the sum total of our dominant thoughts and emotions. It has been said that our life is a living prayer. If this is indeed, is your current life a prayer for love and light, or a prayer of dark and fear? Are you humble and respectful of the energy that flows through you and gives you life? We are a portal through which this energy passes. Have we been taking it for granted? Is perhaps our shortcoming been that we get so focused on this external life of paying our bills, of making sure everything is done and we have enough things to sit on, enough things to put in our closets and all that stuff, that we forget about that we are this portal through which the spiritual energy passes into our spirit. And it is when that it passes into our spirit, which is our portal, and it is our soul that begins to humanize this energy. And then that energy becomes in our physical or reality or our form around us, or our physical form. So the energy comes through our spirit. It humanizes that we can do something with it as a conductor, and through our soul, and then in our body it shows up physically, but more in our reality. That energy that passes through, are we humble with it, or do we take it for granted? How are we using that energy in our daily life? How many days do we go to bed at night going, I could have done a little bit more. Maybe there was a phone call I could have been made. Maybe there was a kind email I could have sent. Maybe I could have taken 5 minutes out of my day and done a little extra for somebody. Our life is a living prayer. What is the prayer of your life saying to the universe? Is it one that we are complete and happy and completely in love with? Or is there room for improvement? This is what we are, about humbly approaching God and saying, what are my shortcomings, God, so that I can be even a better portal through which your energy can pass through me, because I am no longer willing to take that energy that passes through me, that gives me life, that causes my heart to breathe, that pump and causes my brain to work. I am no longer going to take it for granted. I am going to approach you and love you with all that energy that I possibly can, in the most humble of ways, in a respectful of ways, in a down-to-earth that, you know what, I am a part of God and I'm proud of it. That's what it means to be down to earth with that spirit, to get real with it, to create. Bring that quote up one more time, would you please, Dre? The first one we started with. I want you to really look at this again. What makes humility so desirable is the marvelous things it does to us. It creates in us a capacity for the closest possible intimacy with God. Why? Because all the great teachers, all the clearest minds, all the great spiritualists, scientists, teachers, authors, world leaders that have studied spirituality all know that when we're close to God, God never, ever, ever lets you down or fails you. Never. And if you believe so, it's another shortcoming that needs to be healed in a humble way. And an ending from Tom Robbins. He says, there is no such thing as a weird human being. It's just that some people require more understanding than others. So why I share that with you is, do you at times need a little more understanding of yourself, from yourself, of yourself? And can we approach that understanding in a humble way? May we turn within for prayer.